shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Oh, my sermon title today is Jesus Won, Demons Nothing. And there's a little play on words there, because if you say won and you spell it W-O-N, that's the victory. It's Jesus won. And the demons, nothing. The demons, nothing. Well, Jesus shows us God's power over evil. I think that's the main point. And if you want to just meditate on something, if you've got your bulletin, the prayer for today says it so well, that we're asking God to deliver us from all forms of evil. So whether you believe in demons or not, we know that there's evil in the world. And one of the names that the ancient people used to use for any kind of evil was evil spirits or evil demons. So we shouldn't get hung up on demonology. Don't get hung up on it. It just is what it is. And in this story, there were evil demons. Now, I think it's significant that those demons were named Legion. Legion, of course, could mean many, because we're many demons. So there's a whole legion of demons. A Roman legion was apparently about 6,000 soldiers. That's a lot of soldiers. That's a lot of power. That's a lot of enforcing of Roman rule. Well, that's what I think this story is all about. Let me begin with a map of the Sea of Galilee. Here it's called Lake of Gennesaret. And down at the very bottom, see where it says drowning of the swine? And there's Gergesa. Everyone sees Gergesa? Well, Luke says that it was the region or the country of the Gerasenes. Gerasenes doesn't quite match Gergesa. They would be Gergesites, not Gerasenes. But it's right there across from Galilee, and it is right on the lake or on the sea. If you look down a little bit further, there's another town with a similar name, Gadara. There's maritime Gadara, and at the very, very bottom, Gadara off a ways. At the very, very bottom, Gadara. But that doesn't make sense either, because that wasn't close to the sea where the pigs drowned. Well, I did some research and found that there's another town called Gerasa. Gerasa, G-E-R-A-S-A, Gerasa. Well, Gerasa fits with Gerasene, right? If you're from Gerasa, you're a Gerasene. The trouble is, Gerasa is 35 miles southeast of the Sea of Galilee. So the scholars have been puzzling what was really going on here. And when I was doing my graduate work, I was in seminary and I wrote a term paper on this. And I think I've kind of got it figured out, and it really makes sense to me. And now that I love this story, and I hope you could tell by the way I read it this morning. It's an exciting story, and it must have been exciting to the first century Christians. Remember, most of them were Jewish Christians. There were Gentile Christians, but all Christians were familiar with Gerasa. There's another name for this great city. It's Jerash. If you Google Jerash, that's the modern name, Jerash, for Gerasa. Gerasa, or Jerash, is considered one of the most important and best preserved Roman cities in the Near East. Jerash is just north of Amman in Jordan. It was one of the 10 cities of the ancient Decapolis, and there's archaeological evidence that, believe it or not, a Roman legion was garrisoned at Gerasa. Now, when Luke starts this story, he says Jesus got out of the boat. It was in the country of Gerasa. Well, that's not at the lake. That's not at the sea. But as soon as he says Gerasa, or the Gerasenes, every hearer, every reader knows Roman legion. That's where the Roman legion is. That's the Roman city. That's the eastern capital of Rome. So right away there's the clue that this is about Roman occupation. Then, strangely enough, this story about a demon-possessed man. Now, Jesus cleansed many of their demons, but in this instance, he asks the demon, "What is your name?" Legion. Legion. Everybody knew what that meant. Legion was not just a lot of demons. Legion was Rome. Roman occupation, Roman rule. They wanted those Romans out of there. They wished they could be a free country again. So the clues begin to build. Now there was on the hillside a large herd of swine was feeding, and the demons begged Jesus to let them enter these. And right there, I think, is where the first century hearer would start laughing. The Roman legion asked to enter the pigs. What an appropriate place for these dirty, behind their back, they were called pigs anyway. That's what you call people you don't like, the pigs. So the Roman legion says, "Please let us enter the pigs." So Jesus, and I love this phrase, gave them permission. Gave them permission. How nice. It's so subtle. It's so satirical. It's so ironic. So they went into the pigs, fled down the hillside, and drowned in the sea. Now again, going back to those first century Jewish Christians, drowned in the sea is a very, very important phrase. And I hope some of you know what I'm referring to. Who else drowned in the sea? Do you remember a story from the Exodus about the Israelites being freed by God, their great salvation story? They were being led by Moses, and Moses lifted his staff, and the sea parted, and they walked through on dry land. And when they got to the other side, the chariots were following. Egypt. The powerful Egyptian army in their chariots was following to bring back the slaves. And the sea returned, and the chariots of Pharaoh were drowned in the sea. I can't help but see that as Egyptian chariots drowned in the sea, Roman legion drowned in the sea. I think Luke knew what he was doing when he wrote this. The legion went into the pigs, the filthy, dirty animals, the unclean animals, and they were drowned in the sea. Like I said to the kids, we don't call pigs dirty animals. That's not politically correct, right? We don't use that terminology. Pigs are animals like any other farm animal. But in this story, I think there's all this satire is going on. Now, as I was researching all this, I put this phrase into, how Google search engine, I put in herd of pigs. And guess what popped up? A bunch of pictures of pigs, but also this picture with a quote from Joseph Goebbels, who was the minister of propaganda for Hitler, for Nazi Germany. And this quote I thought was really interesting. "If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it." Nazi Germany. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, eventually people will come to believe it. Now, what struck me about that quote is, let us beware during this election year of all the things that are being said by politicians, some of which are truthful, some of which are just wishful thinking. But let us beware of lies and of the dangerous thing of being convinced that just because something's repeated often enough, it must be true. Please be careful. Then another quote, this one was interesting too. Well, that's about lies too. I mean, I guess the whole role of the truth will set you free. You know, Jesus came saying, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And if we come to the truth of Jesus Christ, we won't be deceived by the lies of the world. Another quote from Joseph Goebbels was, let me control the media, and I can turn any nation into a herd of pigs. Wow. Let me control the media, and I can turn any nation into a herd of pigs. That's what I found when I Googled herd of pigs. Well, the Nazi regime certainly intimidated the world for a time, much like the demons in the man from Gerasa, but only for a time. The point of this gospel, the point of the gospel, is that evil cannot, will not last forever. It may have its time, but the power and love of God is so much greater than any power of evil. If you watch the news as much as we do at home now that Carmen and I are retired, you'll know that a lot of evil things happened this past week. There was the terrible shooting in Orlando. 49 people died, 50 counting the shooter. There was a terrible tragedy at Disney World involving an alligator and a child. Warn your kids. Stay away from the water, especially if you're in Florida. Then I was reminded of another wonderful, wonderful hymn, Martin Luther's A Mighty Fortress. And that phrase came to mind, though hordes of devils fill the land, all threatening to devour us, we tremble not, unmoved we stand. They cannot overpower us. No evil will ever be greater than the power and the love of our God. So when the people came out to see what had happened, the story concludes with this wonderful, wonderful wrap-up. When they came to see Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone, and he was sitting at the feet of Jesus. That reminds me of do you remember the story of Mary and Martha? And Martha was busy serving, which was good, but Mary had chosen the portion of sitting at the feet of Jesus. So the same thing in this story, this phrase, sitting at the feet of Jesus. He had become a disciple. He was willing to sit with Jesus, talk, listen, learn, as we do here every Sunday morning. He was sitting at the feet of Jesus. He was clothed. Glad to see all of you are well dressed this morning. And he was in his right mind. And boy, how our nation needs people who are in their right mind. What a phrase. In his right mind. And what a relief for all of the people who knew him as the crazy guy. So may Jesus drive out the demons from our land, whether it's addiction or crazy people or wild animals that attack children, whatever demons may be lurking, even sometimes in the gray matter of our own brain, there are demons. May Jesus drive these out, have power, truth, and love that sets us free. May we know the truth and live by the truth and be set free so that we too can go around our land and our families telling all that God has done for us. Jesus won, demons nothing. Amen.
Well, this light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. And every day, every day, every day, every day, every day, I let my little light shine. Oh, Jesus gave me light, I'm gonna let it